On the morning of October 2, 2001, passengers arriving at European airports found something that had never happened before in the jet age. Swissair planes were sitting on the ground, and they were not moving. Fuel suppliers had cut off credit. The airline could not pay for the fuel needed to fly. Switzerland's flag carrier, an airline that had operated continuously since 1931 and had been called the Flying Bank for its reputation for financial conservatism, had run out of money so completely that it could not buy jet fuel. That is not a story about one bad month. It is the end of a chain of structural choices that began years before anyone called it a crisis. Swissair was founded in 1931, born from the merger of two smaller Swiss aviation companies at a time when commercial flight was still a novelty. Switzerland had no ocean coastline, no colonial trade routes, and a domestic market of modest size. What it had was a reputation for precision, reliability, and neutral competence that crossed political boundaries. Swissair built its identity on exactly those things. Over the following decades, it became genuinely admired. Its balance sheet stayed clean, its service standards were high, and the phrase "flying bank" was not ironic. It reflected a real institutional culture of financial discipline that lasted for most of the airline's history. The model worked because it was tightly scoped. Swissair served its routes carefully, maintained strong yields, and avoided the overextension that hurt competitors. It built the Qualiflyer frequent flyer program in April 1992, together with Austrian Airlines and its own regional partner, Crossair. That program was a sensible loyalty tool, and for a time, it anchored a coherent small alliance. Switzerland's geography made Zurich a natural transit hub between European capitals and long-haul destinations, and Swissair used that position well. The fundamentals were real. Then the European aviation market changed, and Swissair's leadership decided to respond with a strategy that would prove fatal. In 1998, Swissair began acquiring minority stakes in a series of European airlines. The logic was consolidation. The major American carriers had built large alliance networks. Swissair was too small to compete on scale alone, and its management concluded that assembling a coalition of partners would give it the network reach it needed. Qualiflyer expanded from a loyalty program into the organizing brand for this coalition, known as the Qualiflyer Group. Swissair took stakes in carriers across Europe, airlines that were not financially strong, airlines that needed the capital Swissair was providing. Each investment came with obligations. The structural problem was embedded in the design. Swissair was not acquiring healthy partners to build combined strength. It was, in effect, becoming the financial support system for carriers that could not sustain themselves independently. Each new stake extended the cash demands on Swissair's balance sheet. The Flying Bank was spending its reserves to prop up an alliance of airlines with structural cost problems of their own, in a business with notoriously thin margins at the best of times. Through the late 1990s, the strategy was described as bold. European aviation was in a period of deregulation and apparent growth. Swissair's leadership believed the network being assembled would deliver future-scale benefits that would justify the present outlays. The Qualiflyer Group expanded. The investments continued. At its peak, Swissair was operating as the flag carrier of a country with one of the highest standards of living in the world, with a brand that still carried genuine prestige and a route network that connected dozens of cities. From the outside, the empire looked intact. But the hidden crack was already structural. The minority stakes in troubled partner airlines were not temporary bridge investments. They were ongoing cash obligations with no clear path to the operating synergies the strategy had promised. Each partner airline came with its own labor agreements, its own inefficiencies, its own debt. Swissair was bearing equity risk in multiple markets simultaneously while managing its own cost base as a premium carrier in one of Europe's most expensive economies. The financial cushion that had made Swissair the flying bank was being drawn down to fund this expansion, and the returns that were supposed to justify the drawdown were not materializing at the pace or scale the model required. Then 2001 arrived. The September 11th attacks devastated global aviation. Demand collapsed almost immediately. Carriers worldwide began emergency cost reductions, route suspensions, and desperate conversations with lenders and governments. For a financially strong airline, a demand shock of that magnitude was devastating. For Swissair, which had been funding partner airlines across Europe through years of acquisition and now faced a global traffic collapse, the shock did not create the crisis. It revealed that the crisis was already there, just beneath the surface of the balance sheet. Swissair's creditors, including Credit Suisse and UBS, watched the situation deteriorate through the autumn of 2001. The airline needed emergency liquidity. The negotiations were not fast enough. Fuel suppliers, who operated on credit terms and were watching the same deterioration, suspended credit. Without fuel credit, planes cannot be dispatched. On October 2, 2001, Swissair's fleet was grounded. Passengers were stranded at airports across Europe. Staff were left without instruction. An airline that had operated for 7 decades simply stopped flying on a Tuesday morning because it could not pay for fuel. The formal bankruptcy followed. Swissair's biggest creditors, Credit Suisse and UBS, arranged the sale of part of Swissair's assets to Crossair, which had been Swissair's regional counterpart. Crossair was restructured and renamed Swiss International Airlines, which began operations in 2002. The new carrier inherited routes, aircraft, and some staff, but it was a fundamentally different entity, not a restructured Swissair, but a successor built from Swissair's usable parts. With the failure of the parent company, the Qualiflyer Group dissolved. A company was formed to give each former member airline its own individual frequent flyer program. The alliance that had been built at such cost simply ceased to exist. The human scale of the grounding was significant enough that a Swiss drama film released in 2006 depicted the final days before the fleet was stopped. The film drew close to 400,000 admissions in Switzerland, a substantial number for a domestic production, which suggested how deeply the event had registered in Swiss public life. Swissair had not been just a commercial enterprise. It had been a piece of national identity, and its collapse was experienced as a collective loss in a country not accustomed to seeing its institutions fail. The mechanism at the center of the Swissair story is precise and reproducible. A financially conservative institution, operating in a genuine position of strength, adopted a growth strategy that required it to become the capital provider for weaker partners. Each individual investment could be justified in isolation. Together, they created a system in which Swissair's financial resilience, the actual source of its competitive identity, was being steadily transferred to airlines that could not generate adequate returns. When the external shock arrived, there was no buffer left to absorb it. The flying bank had spent its deposits funding an empire it never fully controlled. The lesson is not that ambition destroys institutions. It is that a strategy which converts a core strength into a liability for others cannot survive a serious test. Swissair did not collapse because the world changed. It collapsed because the strategy it chose in response to change required the one thing it could not afford to spend: the financial discipline that had made it worth saving in the first place.